Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co-hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
She's starting to recognize if you've got problems. If you ask about the hot tub, she tells you about the hot tub. If you say the hot tub is broken, our lodging providers already are able to provide a couple of tips before they contact maintenance. So if it's that, 90% of the time it's that the breaker is flipped, then, she'll say, before I contact maintenance, would you mind going out into the garage and flipping and checking to make sure the breaker hasn't been flipped.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
What's up, all my Slick Talkers? This episode is brought to you by my friends at Hostfully. Now, these are the days where enough is enough with managing multiple calendars for your properties in order just to make sure you don't get double booked. And not having a website for your guests to get to know your story and book direct? You can stop stressing, at least a little bit, and check out my friends at Hostfully. Hostfully was created by hosts for hosts, and they understand the importance of centralizing operations, inboxes, calendars, and of course, keeping up with the times and the industry data. You can go to hostfully.com, use my code SlickTalk20 to get access to their digital guidebooks and their property management software. I use them as well, and I love the simplicity of their product. Now, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now sit back and enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Again, I'm your host, Will Slickers, and I have a legend on the show today. And I know, we kind of say the word legend every now and then, but Matthew Loney, who is the founder of Xplorie, I'm super excited to jump in because, as all the listeners know, I love to geek out on guest experience, but I also love to geek out on entrepreneurs and the whole founder's journey. So having you on the show, Matthew, is pretty awesome because we get to do a little bit of both. So I'm really excited to have you on, and welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, I'm doing well. Well, and thank you very much. Very kind words. I'm not sure that they are deserving, but I will take them with a little bit of humility. But thank you. No, I'm thrilled to be here, and entrepreneurship. What a fun topic. Excited to cover some of that today. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, it's only the right thing to do. You reached out on LinkedIn to have me on your guys' new show, the Guest X podcast. And so I was completely honored to be on and talk with you and Brian. And then we recently had Brian on the show. Now we have you. And so I'm really pumped to jump into your story individually. So I kind of want to just jump right in and kind of ask you, where did it all begin? Where is the start, the aha moments, the part where you're like, you know what, I think I'm onto something, all that good stuff. I want to know all the details. So where does it all begin for you, Matthew?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of points. I mean, my entrepreneurship, where my love for being an entrepreneur, I think, really started. That is even prior to Xplorie. I like to tell people I'm a recovering attorney. I only practiced for probably 7 years at some big firms, which was probably 6 years, 11 months too long. I absolutely despise the practice of law. But it took me a while to figure out. But there was a moment my wife and I had actually gone on vacation. We might have been at St. Thomas. We were down the Caribbean, and met a guy on a beach, and he owned factory. They made, some like widgets. I mean, it wasn't anything, but he owned a factory in Ohio. We had a great conversation. And I remember I was in the shower, keep this PG right now. I was in the shower that night, but I was thinking, I was getting ready for dinner, and I got out and I told my wife, I said, it just occurred to me. I said, this is all time. Like, I've got to figure out how to make up later. Like, I've got to bill these hours later, right? I'm just delaying. But, the guy I met, like, he was making money while he sat there on the beach with me. And I'm like, I got to get out of this, selling my time and I want to build something. And so at that point I started, kind of looking for opportunities. And I had a couple opportunities. I left the practice. I was on the restaurant side for a while, which was really interesting, like a really heavy operation or operationally heavy businesses. And got to learn under some really, some great, I would say mentors, both in like private equity and on some of the finance side. And then about 6 years ago, Xplorie, actually, there was a company called ASI, and a founder there who had come up with a lot of the kind of base of what Xplorie does, our base product of kind of these complementary activities, right? But he'd really kind of hit a wall, I would say, growth-wise. It was still a really small company kind of in the Southeast, and I was looking to get out of restaurants, and a mutual acquaintance had put us together, and this was kind of the second aha moment. And I looked at what he was doing. I said, like, if you could build tech around this, right? The concept is incredible. I mean, it really is. It's this unique business model of helping drive occupancy and rate through local tours and attractions, through guest experience. But I'm like, if you could do this with technology, you could really scale this. And so we put together some money with some angel investors. And our founder, the founder of ASI, still sits on our board and is one of the shareholders, minority shareholder of the company. But we kind of took the company then and just realized what we could do with it, and started building the tech, a lot of which runs Xplorie today. So that was kind of the other aha moment.
Was ASI doing this for mostly hotels, or where did the vacation rental side come in? Because I'm kind of curious, did you experience vacation rentals prior to getting into this side? And then, just having that love of the experience, did you want to bring that into the Xplorie world, or was it mostly just starting with what ASI was and then growing from different sectors of hospitality in there?
Yeah, so it was actually exclusively vacation rentals. It was based in Destin, which is, almost predominantly all vacation rentals along the Emerald Coast. And, we were only in, I don't know, maybe three or four markets at the time. We're in 50 today. So it's, it was a small, family owned lifestyle company. But I had a real passion for it. And that's really what I discovered, I think, in restaurants was, I love the guest experience, even in restaurants, for our customers coming in. And what are the smells when they walk in a restaurant? People think usually Subway, right? But I mean, like, Subway built a brand around that smell of when you walk in, that fresh bread. And, so what do they see? What's the first thing? How do you greet them? And, what do the menus look like? And how's the dining room set up? And so I found this passion, and I thought, wow, in the restaurant world, you're kind of somewhat limited to these four walls. But in leisure, especially leisure travel, you have an entire market that is the guest experience, right? And so that's what I really loved about it. And so we've taken it to, kind of along those same lines. We feel like, I think vacation rental is how Xplorie right now predominantly goes to market, but we've now got a couple thousand hotel rooms. We're about to launch with one of our first partners in the glamping kind of RV resort luxury space. I think we're only limiting ourselves by guest experience around experiencing markets and around leisure. Other than that, I don't think we really care what that lodging is, and how the guest wants to, is staying in a market. But once they get to a market, Xplorie wants to be the best way to really experience that market ultimately.
No, I love that. And I love that you brought up the restaurant thing with the experiences, because a lot of the times, like even on the show, we've mentioned, the concept of the destination era, right? People that are wired to create remarkable experiences that are anticipated and shared. And for the longest time, I was like, that's only applied to like hotels and vacation rentals. But then really like looking into the deeper overall hospitality experience, I was like, restaurants can be a destination. They can be a place where guests just completely get sucked into the world that you create within those four walls without making it feel like four walls, if that makes sense. And so like the fact that you mentioned that is super key, because I think, like you said, why limit what you can do with this? And that's super cool and fascinating. And I love the glamping idea. And I think, overall experiences don't have to be a building. They don't have to be a yurt or a tent. They could be anything. And the fact that you guys are tackling that within, overall, not limiting yourself and where you're going to be offering that. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And your point about restaurants as well. I mean, just off the top of our head, we could probably name, there's been some great restaurant concepts where I would say their greatness revolved around the fact that they created an experience and not really around their food, like Rainforest Cafe.
For sure.
Right. Like, probably most people couldn't name what's on their menu. Or I'm sure burgers are on there. But I can picture it when I walk in. Yeah. Think about the Applebee's of the 90s, right? With all the stuff on the local stuff on the walls. And so I think there's a lot of industries which have done a great job of fighting commoditization by the experience. Right. And I think restaurants is to your point, is just one of them. And I think our industry is going through a little bit of that. I don't think it's not a coincidence that with the rise of OTAs, which to me is the rise of commoditization of a product, our product, right? Also came the rise of the importance of guest experience, because the guest experience is what fights. Like, I'm not going to go slowly into that, great night. Like, no, I'm not going to be commoditized, and here's how I'm going to fight it. And those two things, I think that's part of what's driven the importance of guest experience in our industry.
For sure. And I'm pretty sure you guys can see this too. I'm curious to know maybe if you have any insider data on it, but with the last year and a half, almost 2 years of being in lockdowns and open and lockdowns and opens and lockdowns and travel restrictions and all this other stuff going on in the world, like, I bet the experience part is now, like, I know the statistic is that millennials are no longer caring about purchasing items or products as in, having this to show off or flex. They're really just wanting to go live and experience and create moments in different ways that they had never have before. So they're no longer about material possession. They're all about the experience, how they feel in the moment. And so I can only imagine what maybe that drive or push has done for you guys as well. Cause we've all experienced it. We, had that time in the beginning where nobody knew what the heck was going on and no one wanted to leave their house, and we had toilet paper shortages and all this weird stuff happening in the world. So yeah, I can only imagine how much that has boosted, not only the OTAs, as we've seen with, Airbnb going public and all that other stuff, but the overall just drive for feeling something different and new.
Yeah. The in markets, so when you look at the tours and activities industry, right, or the in-market experience, as a rival, one of their big associations kind of coined it. But when you look at the in-market experiences, there has certainly been a couple of things have happened. One is the types of experiences, since the pandemic hit, that people are looking to experience. We've really had to look at our product mix. You are seeing, I want more small group, right? More out in nature. I don't want to be inside as much. There's certainly, depending upon the market, but a lot of it, and I mean, this, given, the area where you operate some vacation rentals. I mean, the attraction of being out away from it all, right? And sometimes unplugged, but sometimes not, but just, in nature, right?
Yeah,
there's a great OTA, got a chance to meet with their COO at the Streamline conference, Yonder. They're building an entire OTA. Yeah, really cool, right?
Really
very
cool.
niche, but yeah, really cool. So I think so there's been a shift, right? You need to have those type of products. And I think as lodging providers, it's important that we understand that shift of the consumer, because if not, we're kind of talking to them sometimes about something they're not interested in. But then also for Xplorie, like vacation rentals, some of them, it has been, it's tough to get their attention, because in the same markets where vacation rentals have just boomed, right? These drive markets, tours and attractions, are sold out. I mean, it used to be, I think 80% of our activities were booked once the guests were getting in market. You're now seeing guests plan out well in advance, because, there's just a limited capacity in a lot of these activities they want to go do. And, but I do think too, you're right. People's focus, I think, to some extent, this pandemic has made us all realize our own mortality. I mean, I don't mean to be grim, but, and people are like, you know what, I'm going to go do things with my kids.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just enough that we're going to go on, but right. Like, my wife and I even, like, we've taken our kids once or twice to Hawaii since the pandemic hit, and we're documenting, and, we're also, we're walking around we can do video and photos right on our phones. And like, I want my kids to like see that we did all these things together, and we, and I think that's a good thing, by the way, too, that like we step away from maybe some of these material possessions, and we go like, how am I going to enrich the lives of me and myself, and then those I love and care about, and spend time together and laugh and play and do those things they're just fun, and really the things that create the memories.
Yeah, for sure. The stuff that you guys can look back on and reflect, especially when, we all know that life has a lot of ups, but also has a lot of downs. So when we're in those down moments, those peaks definitely help to look back and reflect on, and to really relive in a lot of ways. It's part of I think as humans, we don't think about it as much until it happens, but when it does happen, it's like those moments of peace kind of bring you back and help you ground a little bit in a lot of ways, especially like COVID, with the whole pandemic and different variants and other things happening, and different political things happening in the world. Is just making it so uncertain of what direction the world in general is going, that makes a lot of people in their daily lives question the same thing. So having those moments and experiences that they can really just use as a grounder to get them through and help them understand what direction to take, or what moments or decisions to make. And yeah, it's really key. I think we don't think about it as much, but it's a real thing that goes on daily with humans, at least in my opinion. But
I agree, and I do think, I think what the pandemic, we move so fast.
Yeah.
Right. Especially as entrepreneurs. One of the things I've experienced is, you talk about that reflection, right? It's so important to look back, because when you are in that day to day and you're moving so fast, it is very easy to start to feel like you're just pushing a rope uphill, or, that like you're just not making progress. And I tell you what, there's never a time when there's got to be some space, but like any period, a year or more, if you look back, generally I've been surprised almost at the progress we've made. We haven't always reached our goal, but it's only with that perspective of that time frame that you realize it, because I can tell you, like, in the middle of it, sometimes, like, you just don't, like, you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, we're not making ground, and we're not, and so to your point, I think same thing with, with our families and loved ones. I think that especially those first 2 months where every market, whether it was drive-to, what it was shut down, that kind of mid-March to mid-May, and for some a lot longer. But I think it gave us a chance to, like, reflect and go, what am I doing? Like, and look back and start to take some inventory of how I want to, how we wanted to do things going forward. And I think it's important as entrepreneurs that we take that time to really stop and look back.
100%.
And it'll make you, I think, appreciate that hard work you put in.
Yeah. Especially when, a lot of us live by the motto of 1%. That's all I need. I just need to improve a little bit each day. I just need to be 1% better, 1% better. And that 1% sounds so small in that moment, but when you take that time to reflect and, after, let's say 3 months of 1% better, you're a 30% better person or entrepreneur or business owner or operator than you were, 3 months ago. So 30% is pretty great if you ask me. But, have you ever, Atomic Habits, by the way, well, I'm sure you've read it, right? But he talks about a plane leaving, I don't know, LA headed to New York. I'm probably just totally messing this up, but 1 degree off course, finishes, I think, somewhere like south of DC or somewhere like, it's not even close to its destination. But the same thing can be a positive, to your point, which is it just takes 1 degree each day, and that ship turns pretty quick. You just don't see it in that 1% each day. 100%. Yeah. No, and that kind of leads to what I wanted to ask you, because, looking at what ASI was and has become with Xplorie now, you guys probably had a lot of moments, especially when it comes to implementation of technology. You talked about how if we can bring tech into this, this is something that could be really big in our industry, and it has become from what you guys have created. So I'm kind of curious for you now that I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of reflect on your 1% every day. What was the challenges that came with that? But now that you look back at, you're like, man, that was so granular to what we're actually doing now. I'm just kind of curious what on your reflection of, from start to where we are today.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. Well, one of the most frustrating things I've experienced, well, not one of the most, but definitely a frustrating is, building what I'll call operational tech, right? Because, knowing that nobody's ever really going to see this.
Yeah.
But understanding that, like, if you don't have it, though, it's the framework upon which you're trying to build so much of a company. We have spent a great deal of time at Xplorie. And this was a company that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, like, we wrote down guests, activity reservations and orders, we call them, on like pad and paper. And then we'd call the activities and we'd book them, right? And we'd write down that. And then you'd file the paper with the property manager so that we could report back what their guests were doing and stuff. And so, we spent a lot of time, and now looking back, we spent so much time building that management system, which manages all the intricacies of both the guest stays, coming through the property. So we've got 14, I think it is now, integrations, 14 property management software systems that we're integrated with. And then you've got the reservation management systems on the activity side. So you're bringing in all this guest data, all this activity information, all this content, you're organizing it and setting parameters around it about, when do the dolphin cruises go out, and, and different times of years and schedules and, rate calendars for activity. Like, you're building all this. and it's no one cares, right? But now you look back, we launched last year this concierge platform with Amazon and their Echo, and none of that would be possible if that foundation wasn't built.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But in the middle of it, like we just had it just felt like the most tedious thing. You were like building something that you knew was great, but that no one was ever going to really appreciate unless you like brought investors in. Maybe you could like look under the hood. I don't know. And so I look back now and I go, God, what a great, it was such a great thing to focus on. But I remember in the middle of it, it was no fun, right? Because as entrepreneurs, we want to build stuff that people look at and they go, holy cow.
Yeah.
So that tedious work, I think sometimes is pretty hard for entrepreneurs who want to really be about that big picture.
100%. And there's a lot of times as humans, we have tasks in our daily life that we don't like to do. It doesn't give us energy. Then there's tasks that gives us energy.
Yep.
And the same thing as entrepreneurs, building the ground or the foundation. A lot of it can be really exciting. I know for me, I just loved building a brand, creating the graphics and doing the design. Not that I did it, but getting the thoughts out of my brain and onto a computer screen or onto a pen and paper, to then convert to the computer or wherever. That was so much fun. But then there's all these little tasks in between, figuring out how to start a website. It's I have no idea. Don't care about that. I care about it, but I don't know how to do it. It didn't give me energy. Didn't make me excited to wake up in the morning. But, you probably were going through the same thing with, building this technology that nobody's looking at other than the operators or maybe even just a small team inside the company or just yourself, whatever that start was. It's rough because there's a lot of tasks that don't give energy. So pushing through that is always, I think, the hardest part as an entrepreneur, where we just have to do those tasks no matter what, because at the end of the day, in order to get your end goal, that's what needs to be done. And you gotta bite the bullet a little bit, and it sucks. But I'm just kind of curious for you, what was that like?
Yeah, for me, especially, I'm such a people person. I want to be out talking to people, selling the dream, and how these things are actually going to happen. To your point, it sucks my energy, right? Because and I think valuing that, finding people to put around you as an entrepreneur, right? Who that is their strength, right? That's what gives them energy, is figuring out all the hurdles to getting that built on the back end is really important, because as an entrepreneur, most entrepreneurs I know, that is not what gives them energy, right? But without them, without those people, it is very difficult. So, I've been lucky enough, to have a really good core group around us at Xplorie, who many of which were with ASI. My chief of staff, I think, has been with us 12, 13 years. Our CTO has been with us 12 years, knows the core business model inside and out. And that's what they really enjoy, was kind of the puzzle of solving it all. And so I think it's just really important to understand that, the vision without the execution is nothing. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I've met a lot of people who've had great ideas, and so, understanding if you're not that person who's going to be tackling that, not underestimating the value of those who are going to be the ones tackling it, because it's your idea, but you're probably not going to be able to get it done by yourself. Or if you do, it's going to take a lot longer. And so that was really the tough part for me, was just, that's not a people part of the business of solving that back end tech piece.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I'm getting ready to go into a meeting today where, they want to adjust the guest experience based on, the loyalty parameters and the history of what we know about the guest. And I'm thrilled to tell them, yeah, we can do that. But it's only we can do that because, my team had the foresight, 4 years ago when they're building that underlying tech to see that was eventually where we were headed.
Yeah.
So pretty cool.
That's crazy. And just to think you can build a roadmap that looks that far ahead, knowing it's going to be something but I know it's just how the iPhone comes out with a new version every 6 to 8 months or every year. It's they're already working on iPhone 15 or 20. But we're only at 12 or 13 at this point. And so entrepreneurship, just seeing where the business, you knew you're at the iPhone 1, 5 or 6 years ago. But you had to get to the 13 within, you knew that progression. So it's kind of crazy to think of, that the execution and vision combination. It's just, I don't know. It's something that I feel like I geek out on for hours and still not fully understand the whole thing on how it works on the human brain and, thoughts and the drive behind it. And it's just super fun and cool. Hey, I hope you guys are enjoying this episode, and I wanted to drop in quickly to let you know that our partners at Jetstream have some of the best-in-class technology that sits at the heart of the guest experience with a focus on generating revenue for your property assets. With their platform, your property gets the best-in-class tech and integrations to remote access, guest screening, booking protection, and payment processing. Better yet, their team does all of the hard work of 24/7 guest communication and content creation. So go ahead, click the link in the show notes so you can jump on board today and take advantage of their professional hospitality team. Now, we're back to the episode. I want to know for you, Matthew, because there's been, I would say, there's a lot of different experiences that you guys can focus on. Same thing for us. We can focus on whether it's a good welcome experience, whether it's a good in-destination experience with great partners, if it's a great, just online presence experience where they just feel really comfortable and safe to book and not have to worry or stress about anything. But for you guys, I guess, what's been maybe the biggest hurdle that turned into a success? Was it the concierge program that you guys created with Amazon? What's the one thing that you guys were just having to really tackle and then just come out the other side just better than you ever expected?
Yeah, I think, and I don't think we're there yet, but I will tell you, we are light years further than I thought we would be. But, ultimately guest engagement, guest apathy, I think is one of the biggest hurdles to creating a guest experience. And the guests don't realize it, but they almost get in their own way of having a great guest experience. And it's not their fault. I think they're so bombarded with, just advertisements. And then like you and I were saying, the day-to-day of their lives, right? That it's just, even for a vacation that they're excited about, getting them to really engage and slow down enough to start to plan that and their activities and what they want to do. And, when ASI and even the early days of Xplorie, we relied entirely upon our lodging partners it was a true kind of white label experience. You told your guests about the local activities. We kind of pulled them all together. You told them how to contact, how to book, through emails going out through your property management software system. And so, a few years ago, we finally, we kind of just came to the conclusion, look, we're only going to be as good as our success in driving engagement, because if the guests aren't engaged with this content, then we truly can't make their experience better. And so, we pulled back and we started looking at what our partners were doing. A lot of them, they were putting these emails into their property management software system. And some of our clients have been with us for 15, some of our clients have been with us 22 years, if it goes back through ASI even. And, but, you run into clients who 5 years, they haven't changed that email. Like nobody's A/B testing it. So we pulled that. We built, we took a very robust ESP and email system, and we built APIs to it so that it's dynamic for your stay. So it knows the time of year you're staying. It knows the activities. Like it's following, if you're clicking on horseback riding, then the next couple of emails, the imagery is very outdoors focused, right? Versus if you click on dinner shows, it's showing you more of that. And so we really took responsibility, understanding that our clients have way too much on their plates of that kind of guest experience in the market in which they're staying. And then, of course, Ziva, our voice assistant, was another part of that. It was like, okay, here's how we're going to get to them, text and email between when they book and when they arrive. And then once they arrive, we're going to have these devices in the unit. And, what we've been able to do, I think, and part of the reason we've gotten that engagement now is it's starting to feel less disjointed, right? The guest now, it kind of feels like the same, at least when you're talking about the experiences in the market, the emails kind of fit, they talk the same way as then Alexa does on the devices. And it feels very seamless, I think, for the guests. And, that's something I think I'm most proud of, because it is just really hard to get these guests' attention. And you know that. I mean, I talk to our partners who are like, look, I can't get guests to open the email that's got their lock codes.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. You're not wrong. I literally, before our podcast, was just like, why is this guest why are they not answering any of our stuff? Like, they need to do this stuff before they can get into the property today. And I know exactly what you're talking about. It's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's, and again, I don't think it's something, I don't know that guest communication engagement is anything you'll ever master. I think we finally at least have the tools now where we can bring in really smart people who can figure out how to, now it's small adjustments.
Yeah.
Right. It's continuing to tweak it and look at different platforms and, chat bot, like there's all these different ways, but I don't feel like now it's huge swings where before it was like, God, how do you eat the elephant?
For sure. Well, did you guys ever, I'm kind of curious on this because I know there was a lot of excitement internally in the industry when, companies like Marriott kind of announced their Amazon Alexa type partnership. But did you guys ever get any pushback with this type of technology being in property, whether it's a vacation rental or hotel room, etc.? Did you guys ever have that pushback from the guest side that you needed to continue to build that trust or that learning curve that kind of comes with, voice operated technology?
Yeah. So I think, surprisingly, no, the adoption around voice for us was much higher than we kind of anticipated. So we initially rolled it out in a market. So we picked a couple markets, and it was a beta test. We did it in Pigeon Forge, which was a market that we thought would see maybe the lowest adoption, right? I mean, and then we picked a couple other markets that we thought maybe would have a little higher adoption. And here, a couple things though, a couple things I think we did different. And some of it was just like all entrepreneurship. Some of it was just good luck and good timing.
Yeah.
So one is, I think, when you look at Marriott, they were, pre-pandemic, they were, voice came, even over the last 18, 24 months, I mean, voice has come a long way. I think there was something out by Google, I think the other day, that like 35% last year in 2020 of all internet searches were done via voice. So I think our phones have trained us, right? The voice technology on the back end's gotten a lot better. So that was one. Another was, and it was a key piece of the development, was one of our kind of non-starters was guests have to be able to interact with this device without having to invoke a skill, and, so it's not, hey, Alexa, ask Marriott, blah, blah. You just say, hey, Alexa, and just like you talk to your device or your phone at home, except that the device provides curated local content. And so I think because of that, guests are quick to adopt, right? Because it is, again, eliminating that friction. You're not going to train me for a 4-day stay to talk to this device and say, ask and then give my property manager's name. I'm just not going to do that. And so, the proof's kind of been in the pudding, I think I think it was July is the last stats I had, but I think we're up to like 5,000 devices now live.
Wow.
And I think in July, the average the average day of a reservation had over 12 questions answered per day.
Wow.
Of a reservation on average. Yeah.
Do you think a lot of them just like playing with it? They're just like, hey, what's the, they ask like questions just to play. And then.
Yep. And about half the questions are normal Alexa questions.
Gotcha.
Play music is one of the biggest ones, right? You get a lot of questions about the weather, the time, setting alarms, right?
Yeah.
And timers in the kitchen, which at first it was a little bit of a downer, right? We're like, well, you can do that with any Alexa. Like we just spent all this time and all this money, but I was like, you know what? But that's guest engaged, and clearly we're solving for something, right?
Yeah.
And so that's okay. We don't want it to be all that, but so you see a lot of that in the homes. The homes make up, let's see, of the remaining 6, about 2 questions a day are around the home. Wi-Fi is 33% of all home questions.
Yeah.
What is the Wi-Fi? The average reservation asks her 3 times over the course of the stay.
Wow.
But trash is a big one. What do we do with the trash? What day is trash? Parking, pool questions, so you see a lot of good questions there. And then about 4 questions a day are about the market.
Okay.
Restaurants and activities are the most popular there. Yep.
Wow. Interesting. That's super crazy. I never thought, that would be something that people are implementing and like really using, just because I use Siri every now and then, but it can be so inaccurate sometimes where you're like, all right, it's not even worth it. I'm just going to go to Google and type in my question because it keeps asking, where's the best restaurant, but it keeps taking me to, a bowling alley or something like that.
Yeah.
So
yep.
That's pretty interesting and cool. I'm kind of, curious because now you guys, so you and Brian Hamawi have a podcast called the Guest X Podcast. And I'm curious to know because, with the Alexa product being a voice activated and then with the podcast being very content focused and audio related in the sense of voice, for you guys, when it comes to content, actually, sorry, I'm going to split my question into two questions here. So for the Alexa side, when it comes to uploading content, simple stuff like I didn't even think about, guests asking about, trash or, overall pool and other products or services or just overall amenities in the property or destination. So what's that content management like with you guys on that back end? Is it sounds like, because, vacation rentals are very unique to that property. Each property is usually pretty different in some way or form. How do you guys manage all that content inside like the Xplorie side?
Yeah, so there's a portal. So we set up all the properties. We've got what we call a Ziva content team that maintains all of the external, meaning outside the property or the condo tower, right, or the gated community, which outside that, we maintain all of that. So restaurants, transportation, and they maintain it. What's really cool is, kind of understanding the industry, they maintain it they've got a 6-month calendar at any given time. So even as festivals, seasonal type events, within the devices, those pop up and she'll start talking about the local farmers market. If it's during that period, whatever they've got on that market's we build up marketing calendars for every single one of our markets, and they've got the next 6 months kind of laid out. And then we do the initial setup. One of the things our tech team is building this year is more what we call operational APIs to our property management software partners, because some of this information is stored in there, right? Wi-Fi passwords, checkout procedures, things like that. And also building back so that when, through the Alexa devices, guests can check out. Well, right now that's done through an email or text to a department that you set up, and that may be your people at your office or whoever, and they go in and they check out the guests. But by next summer, before next summer, she'll actually, if you want her to, she'll check the guest out. Cool. Looking at the housekeeping application. So if you want to, if the guest requests mid-stay cleans or they need something and it's housekeeping or maintenance related, they'll actually she'll notify maintenance or housekeeping, done through text or email. Now we've got to build the APIs into these applications that are running groups housekeeping, and whether it's a Breezeway or the You're Welcome, and their tablet just came out with a housekeeping function, so that it just tells the system and no employee ever has to kind of touch it.
Yeah.
So, but last thing on that, but one of the things I think is going to be really cool is we're building. Give you a little bit. Nobody really. This is the first time I think we've talked about it publicly, so it'd be kind of cool. But she already is starting to. Yeah, she's starting to recognize if you've got problems. So if you ask about the hot tub, she tells you about the hot tub. If you say the hot tub is broken, our lodging providers already are able to provide a couple of tips before they contact maintenance. So if it's that, 90% of the time it's that the breaker is flipped, then, she'll say, before I contact maintenance, would you mind going out into the garage and, and flipping and checking to make sure the breaker hasn't been flipped.
Yeah.
And, that saves a lot of calls. Well, so next year we're going to start beta testing the Echo Shows, which have a screen. And we've come up with a really cool way where you, as a property manager, your maintenance team can go into a house. You can hit video. You can literally show them the breaker, and show them what it looks like and say, flip this switch. And so as she's saying that, the video can be playing of you showing them where the linens, the extra pillows and the extra towels on. But again, just another medium and people think we've done this for our property managers, and we have, but really it's a better guest experience.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to call my property. They don't want to call you either. That's why I tell my clients, trust me, they would love nothing more than to just be able to access that information and go about their day. And I think that's how I think we can create more rich content, is just by, making it easy to just upload this straight in from your phone, do a quick little video and be done.
Well, yeah. You and I were just talking about that before the call, or before the recording today was, you're talking about, the guest experience focus isn't just to ease the operations. It's really to ease the guest, friction that happens upon booking, checking in, checking out, mid-stay, all that stuff. And now that you mentioned that, that whole video process, how many times I've could have used that? I'm like, oh man, as you're talking, I'm just thinking of all the scenarios that was man, if I could have just, easily had, this type of access to not have to drive to the property, or not to have to, go back and forth with the guest via text or email or whatever their method of contact was. Super incredible. I'm actually mind blown just kind of thinking about it. So, well done to you guys on your team.
Well, we're getting there. Yeah, we're excited about it. And I will say, the one thing I think too, a little bit of an issue we've got as an industry is when we think about these content, right? We think we've got to build all this at once.
Yeah.
And I think getting people to understand, your content around a home is like a breathing doc.
Yes.
So you start with the basics.
100%.
And then as you start to get questions or, recognize that there's common issues, then you swing by that house at some point, you do a quick video, you upload it, you get that answer. And it's amazing. It's back to our 1%, right? About a year later, you'll be amazed at the amount of content you've got on a home. Yeah. And by the way, the value of that to your homeowners, when you think about keeping them on your program, right? All that has to be recreated by another property manager somewhere. Like, I think it makes homeowners a lot stickier, especially if you're good at showing them. Sure. And I think sometimes in our industry, we're not great at beating our chests, right, to our homeowners, justifying our fees. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a great way we can do that.
Oh, for sure. I love that. I really do. As a content creator myself on the podcast side and as a manager, I think that's a phenomenal solution. So, you guys are really building something useful, like really useful, like on both parties. I think it's just, that's really cool. I never even knew. So
good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, now
glad you like it.
Yeah. Well, I want to geek out on the podcast really quickly.
Sure.
With you guys on creating the Guest X podcast. So what's your thoughts on overall podcasting? Kind of tell us maybe why you guys decided to get into it, and the overall creation of your guys' show.
Yeah. So, and thank you. And, you were nice enough to come on. I think we've done 25 episodes. Watching, Brian and I listened to a number, I think at least 5 or 6, one day we were we dove into your podcast. There's a couple others in our industry. John Stokinger's got one, but there aren't a lot. Right. And, just to try to learn, it was really Brian Hamawi, who is just incredibly passionate. My co-host, he was the one who came up with the idea. He called me out of the blue. He said, look, is this something you'd be willing to do? And I will tell you, I probably shouldn't admit that I had never really gotten into podcasts. I mean, I knew the general concept.
For sure.
So I will tell you, one of the things I've learned, it's really hard. It is really hard and really time consuming. I've told Brian a number of times, you didn't tell me, the amount of time that you spend, prepping for these shows, and talking to people and getting them on. But I also will tell you that's the negative is I've been really, and I hate the sound of my voice. I've learned that too. I'm like, God, do I really sound like that? But I will say on the positive side, it has been an excuse to have conversations with some of the most intelligent, enlightening people. Look, every podcast we do I walk away and go, oh my God? Well, no, but on average, I've been shocked at how enjoyable it is, really, and how much I feel like I learned. And so, it's very niche for us, which is, all about guest experience. Although we think that is a very broad category now, from booking all the way, from searching for your property to booking to all the way through to almost back to where you're, looking for inspiration again. But still, it is, we're not going to reach a massive audience, and we're not really trying to. But I think that, the Brian's thought was, there's a lot of good things happening out there, and there's really, and it's probably some people have tried some things that didn't work, but there's nobody who's really trying to aggregate that content for people who are looking to promote their guest experience and improve it. And so, our thought process was, let's just keep that conversation going. And if we bring on really smart people, it'll kind of take on a life of its own, and it's starting to. We've got some conferences that we're going to go to this year, and kind of do a podcast or two live from, and talk to people who are doing some really cool stuff, and it's just been a lot of fun.
No, for sure. Everything you said was very relatable. I get it. So no, that's really cool. I think, and podcasting is just it's such a great form of. I think creativity, but then also, with the current world, like even before, 2020, I started my podcast in 2018, and that was like the most, like, I was just bored. I had no idea that it was going to turn into something like this, where I'd be talking to people like you and many other people in the industry that I've never met. Like, I was just having a conversation last night with one of my close friends out in Colorado. It was like, I'm about to meet at VRMA some of the people that I've been talking to via email and podcast and LinkedIn and all this other stuff, I've never met in person over the last 2.5 years. Like, that is the power of, a podcast, not even just a podcast, but just the power of like the internet and social media and content building. And it's really relationship building. Like, the fact that you can talk about people that you've never met in your life in person and know like their personal story, know their, know their husband or wife's name and their kids and their, whatever their daily life is like. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then on the top of that, like, you can now have a deep, intentional conversation, whether it's, top 10 ways to grow your vacation rental inventory, or whether it's learning more of like founder stories and journeys and going like through people's personal experiences with, failure and success and, struggles and high moments. It's really, I don't know. There's no way I can describe it other than it's liberating. It's exciting. It's really refreshing in a lot of ways. And so, like, yeah, you made a good point. You don't walk away from every episode like, oh my gosh, I'm a new man. But there's a lot of them where there's tidbits. So you could just be like, that 15-30 seconds really put a new perspective on me, and how can I implement that today? Or how can I continue to keep that in the front of, go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, you said something, I think importantly too, and about your podcast in general, one thing I want to say before we wrap up is, two things. One is, I may not, or you may not, right? But you never know who did, right? Like, there was that one thing, and I think as entrepreneurs, and why I think what you're doing is such a great spin on this is, and I can't remember who I was telling the other day. People don't realize, like, entrepreneurship can be at times, a very lonely place.
100%. Yeah.
Like, you don't know who. Sometimes it's because you can't talk to people because you feel like, like people are going to steal my ideas, right? And we tend to be a little, I think sometimes, we're a little, there's always somebody in the shadows looking, but sometimes rightfully so. But also, there's dark nights, right? Of like sitting there and, I found as an entrepreneur, it's not usually, I can put in more time. Like, if it's operational difficulties, like, and it just means I got to bear down for a 6-month period, a year, like, I can do that. It's when I run into the problems that, like, no amount of just hard work, like, it can push it across. Like, I have to solve it. Like, I got to think of a way to solve a problem. And you can get into some dark places. And I think, what this podcast does is it allows people who are maybe going through that to listen to some of these founders and go, okay, like, how I'm feeling, like, isn't unique. Like, other people have felt it's okay. They have these same self-doubts, and look at what they built.
For sure.
Right. And I just don't think we can overstate the importance of that feeling of then realizing I'm not alone, even though I may be doing this alone, I'm not alone. And I think those are two very different things entrepreneurs need to understand. Is you may be doing it by yourself, but you're not by yourself. Yeah. And that's, these podcasts like you're doing is awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think you can relate to this too. Even having a team, like, I've finally brought on, we've brought on one full-time employee officially, and it's just been like, even having her and my business partner, and then everyone that we collaborate with, whether it's in destination for our management company or if it's for the podcast, even with people by your side, sometimes it can still feel very lonely because at the end of the day, there's a different type of responsibility on you as the founder than there is on, anybody else, whether it's your destination partners or anybody. Like, I don't know. There's just a different type of feeling that comes with that. And it's incredibly isolating sometimes. I was just telling a friend last night, like, I'm so excited for October to come, because the amount of travel and conferences and all this other stuff happening is so exciting, because sometimes, like in the past month, like I said, I've been feeling very isolated, like very, not intentionally, not like I'm like hiding away at home, but it's go to the office, work, come home, eat, work, and go to sleep and redo the whole thing over again. So, sometimes there are those moments, like you said, you feel very isolated, you feel very alone. You're not, like you're still working, you're still collaborating with others, you're still doing stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just a different type of feeling. So it's good to know
it is.
Yeah. That others are going through the same thing, even though you know it already, like internally when you're going through, you're like, I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. But then to hear it or to see it or to experience it somewhere else, just kind of adds that little bit of comfort. So I totally know what you're talking about.
No question.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, I love giving every guest an opportunity to give a shameless shout out or a shameless plug, whatever you want to call it. For anyone who's listened to the episode today, where's the best place that they can find you? They can learn more about you as a person, or about Xplorie, or about you guys' podcast.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for that. So, from Xplorie standpoint, you can always, email me. Email is probably the best way. It's Loney, that's MLONEY at Xplorie.com. That's XPLORIE.com. You can also, if you want to just talk to our team, hello at Xplorie.com works. And, we'd love to chat with you. We're currently, just in the U.S., but we are, we're starting to expand some of our markets. We'll be up in New Jersey next summer, so probably add another 10 markets this year, and then we're looking at some point in 2022 a little bit of some international expansion. Probably first going to start with more English-speaking countries, but so really no areas off the table. And really, if you just want to learn more about what we do, we would love to talk to you. And then for the Guest X podcast, I mean, you can listen to it on, Apple and of course Anchor. But probably the easiest way is just go to guest, the letter X podcast.com, GUEST, the letter X podcast.com, and got a bunch of past shows. Of course you were on, Will. We've had Simon Lehman. We actually, I think, maybe tomorrow, Universal Resorts, or Universal Resort, Orlando Resort is going to be on. So it's not just, we're trying to bring on some of the activities and find out how they look at guest experience. I mean, Universal, they're up there as one of the lead, when you think about guest experience, I'm not sure anybody's doing it better right now than Universal. And so fascinating to hear those guys talk. And so, all the past episodes there, and we'd love some feedback too, because like we said, we're not like you. How many episodes do you have under your belt now, Will?
With this show,
approximately how many?
With this podcast specifically, not including our other ones, we're over 200 episodes right now. So, yeah.
Okay. So we're at 25. So when ours doesn't sound like Will's, and it doesn't sound, but just close your eyes and imagine it's all packaged nicely like Will's is. But I think the content's really good, mainly because we've been lucky enough to have great guests like you on. But it's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's what I always tell other people is like, the audio isn't the biggest thing that makes a podcast good. It's the content inside. It's the conversation. It's the way you guys, becoming a good interviewer, which you and Brian were like, it felt very natural to be on your guys' show. Just like the smoothness of the flow, the conversation, the content inside, the intention of the conversation was just really nice. And so, that right there makes a really good podcast. That's why I tell people is like, the only reason why people are listening is because they care what you're saying. They don't care how it sounds exactly. Like, obviously audio is important, but it's not the number one key. Like, you just gotta have good content. And I think that's what you guys are doing. So it's really great. I'm excited to be a guest. It was an honor to be on. So of course we'll plug the show. We'll plug the episode. Matthew, I just want to say thank you so much for being on Slick Talk today. Again, been watching you from afar before even being on your guys' podcast and seeing Xplorie pop up, and it's just been really cool to see the journey. So I'm excited to get this episode out to the radio waves or the airwaves or whatever you call it. And for all the Slick Talkers out there, just make sure that you check out all the links in the show notes, because this is something you don't want to miss out. If you're about a guest experience, if you're about hospitality, then Xplorie is where you need to check it out and go listen to their podcast as well. So Matthew, thank you so much again, my friend, and we'll talk again very soon.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for having me, Will.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
In hotels and vacation rentals, the top complaints or issues are noise, garbage, and parking. I may not be able to solve all of your parking and garbage problems, but I could definitely help with your noise problems. And that actually might just help your garbage and parking problems too. So NoiseAware is the only 100% privacy-safe noise monitoring solution that property managers and owners can use in order to ensure they avoid parties and other issues happening at their property. You won't get notified when a plate breaks, but if you have a little quiet get-together that kind of gets out of hand, like this, then NoiseAware will give you the peace of mind to ensure that you and your property, and of course, your profits, are protected. So use my code SlickTalk20 to get 20% off of all noise monitoring devices and focus on the other important things that help you run your business. Now, thank you for checking out Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast. Get back to the episode, and don't forget to check out NoiseAware while you're listening. What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.